So I wanted to share, I guess, quickly how I do the toe. I've already done the caster and the camber. I'm finishing up with the toe. A lot of guys use 3/4 inch electrical conduit, and it works pretty well. So I've used it for the past decade or so, half decade, whatever, and it's worked perfectly for me. I start out with 2 equal lengths. I pick a number that is a little bit wider with respect to track in the front and the rear, and I'll put marks or drill holes in the conduit. So whatever this number is, from where you see the line there to here, and I forget what the dimension is. It really doesn't matter as long as it's a little bit wider than the car. So I do that with the front conduit and do it with the rear conduit, and I'm careful to make sure that the lines are in the exact same spot on each conduit. I use 4 jack stands, one at each corner, front and rear, and then I wire the conduit down to my jack stand, and I add a little bit of weight to hold it down. You can't really reef on that line, but it's nice and taut, doesn't sag in any way, because if you do, you'll start to tip the jack. But I've got a bit of weight on there, so I can get it nice and tight enough to do what I needed to do. I make sure you start with an axle that's centered in the car with relation to the pickup points on the chassis. And in this case, I'm dead nuts. I'm good. It works well with the body. It works well with the pickup points. So and I know the back is good. And what I do is basically get the car centered in relation to the lines. And you want to get the same dimension on both sides of the car. And what I like to use in the back is the face of an axle. So if I bring my stick rule up nice, just under the bottom of the line, I end up with about 9 5/8 in the back, and I will see 9 5/8 on the other side when it's all said and done, and that works out perfect. But it could be any number as long as it's the same on both sides. And then the front, I like to use the machine surface with the threads on there from the hub, so I'll butt it right to that surface, and I end up with about 9 1/2 inches in the front. It's a little skewed from the camera, but that's what I end up with. So I had to go back and forth a number of times to get a number, and that's the number that worked out. So as you can see, I write 9 1/2 just to remind myself and make sure if my dog bumps into the line or something like that, I can set it back to where it's supposed to be. And again, in the back, the number that worked was 9 5/8. So again, I'm 9 5/8 to that axle hub. So once I know that these lines are parallel, they're right where they need to be, and I can get started. I can pick a side with the steering wheel locked and the wheels pointed roughly straight ahead. I'll measure to the front of a wheel, about halfway up the wheel and just under my line. And in this case, I'm about 5 1/2 inches. And I go to the back of the wheel, again doing the same thing, and I'm about 5 1/2 inches. So on the other side, I was roughly the same thing. When I measure as close as can be, and I'm not moving and it's not skewed on the line, what I end up with is what I wanted to end up with was a slightly larger dimension in the front, which means that front wheel is canted or tipped in. That's toe in, versus if I had a larger number in the back of the wheel, that would mean that the wheels were toed out. The back of the wheel was tighter than the front. So I've got the number that I want. I'm roughly 0 to 1/16 of an inch of toe in. So the caster, the camber, and the toe are finito.